Hello and welcome everyone to week 5 of the 3rd annual Arkansas Bike Summit. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Amy Ross, the director of Bike Bentonville at Visit Bentonville. And while we wish you were here in person, hanging out with us in the mountain bike capital of the world, we look forward to hosting you in the future. A little bit about the Arkansas Bike Summit and its purpose is to increase awareness of best practices, engage advocates, industry thought leaders, and change makers to tackle topics such as development, marketing, and cultural trends. A few housekeeping notes before we get started with our roundtable discussion today. We will take question and answer at the end of this discussion, so anytime during the discussion, please enter those questions at the bottom of the toolbar at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to those in the last 10 to 15 minutes. If you'd like to share any of your experiences with us while you're attending the virtual summit, you can tag us on social media at Visit Bentonville, at Bike Bentonville, and hashtag AR Bike Summit 2020. I'm really excited about our conversation today. We have a lot of local leaders here within the city of Bentonville and the state of Arkansas. And we're going to do this a little bit differently and have a roundtable discussion so that you can really get the feel of how well we collaborate within our community. So with that, I'm going to introduce all of our speakers. Cobb. Graham is the president and CEO of the Greater Bentonville Area Chamber of Commerce. Graham stank at sports, so he played in a punk rock band to learn about teamwork. He spent 20 plus years earning a PhD in pizza before heading to Arkansas Business to learn how to engage an audience with content in order to find customers to help local and national businesses. In late 2013, he entered the chamber world as COO of the Little Rock Regional Chamber and is currently the president here in Bentonville, where he greatly serves the community that is home to the world's greatest adventurepreneur, Sam Walton. Graham relishes this quality of life as it provides him time to chase fast folks on mountain bikes, enjoy a great meal with his amazing wife, Lisa, and soak up precious moments with his 2 children, William and Sissy, while searching for painted rocks, exploring on family rides, and immersing themselves in creativity on the Crystal Bridges Art Trail and campus of the Momentary. Welcome, Graham. Next, we have Suzanne Grobmyer. Suzanne is the Executive Director of Arkansas Parks and Recreation Foundation. Suzanne is responsible for strategy, communications, operations, and philanthropic efforts of the foundation. Prior to her work with the foundation, Suzanne spent over a decade in the nonprofit and fundraising sectors. During her tenure, Suzanne has led the Monument Trail Partnership with Arkansas State Parks, focusing the work on building outstanding outdoor recreation experiences while opening parks to new and evolving groups of people across our great state. Today, monument trails have been developed in 4 parks: Hobbs, Mount Nebo, Pinnacle, and Devil's Den, and span 63 miles and counting. The experience along the trails intersect natural and historical beauty with art and architecture in some of the most storied and beloved outdoor spaces. Suzanne resides in Little Rock with her husband, Andrew, their daughter, Margaret, and son, George. Welcome, Suzanne. Kaelian Griffith is the president and CEO of Visit Bentonville. She promotes the city of Bentonville as a world-class travel destination, a lead advocate for growth in her community within arts, cycling, trails, culinary, music, aviation, meetings, and sports. Her strategy is to create an environment of collaboration that fosters growth and encourages partnerships for success. Kaelian played competitive softball at Dodge City Community College and rugby at Kansas State University. She started her community-focused career at Dodge City Parks and Recreation as the adult sports coordinator, leading her to her role as president and CEO of Visit Bentonville in 2005. As a mother of a competitive athlete, ranging from soccer and basketball to softball, she continues to witness firsthand the experience of tourism in other cities as she travels to attend her daughter's softball games and tournaments. Governor Asa Hutchinson appointed her to the Arkansas State Parks, Heritage, and Tourism Commission. She is a board member of the Southeast Tourism Society, Arkansas Hospitality Association Travel Council, Arkansas Association of Convention Visitor Bureau, Bentonville Chamber of Commerce, Downtown Bentonville, Inc., Bentonville Parks Public Arts Advisory Board, Bentonville History Museum, Dress for Success, and the Amazium Children's Museum. She's been awarded the 40 Under 40 by Arkansas Business Journal, the Northwest Arkansas Business Journal C-Suite Award, and named one of AY's magazine's Intriguing Women of the Year in 2019. She enjoys spending time with her husband, John, and their two children, Keegan and Keela. Welcome, Kaelian. David Wright. David is the director of Bentonville Parks and Recreation, who is a 20-year-plus veteran of the public parks and recreation field. Prior to joining Bentonville Parks and Recreation, Wright worked 10 years with Fayetteville Parks and Recreation, as well as stints with Fayetteville Youth Center and the Memphis Parks Commission. He is a certified Parks and Recreation professional by the National Parks and Recreation Association and serves on multiple national boards and committees overseeing recreation policy. In 2008, Bentonville Mayor Bob McCaslin hired Wright to become director of Bentonville Parks and Recreation, asking him to transform the department into a comprehensive park and recreation system. Since that time, Wright has worked with many partners to open facilities including Orchards Park, Lawrence Plaza, the Bentonville Community Center, and more than 80 miles of trails, including the Razorback Greenway and the Slaughter Pin Mountain Bike Park. In addition to Wright's department now offers more than 140 recreation programs per year, serving more than 3,500 million people annually. Under Wright's leadership, Bentonville Parks and Recreation has become a department generally recognized as one of the top municipal recreation departments in Arkansas and the Midwest. Welcome, David. And last but not least, Gary Vernon. Gary is the program officer for Walton Personal Philanthropy Group, supporting Tom and Stuart Walton. Gary is a lifelong cycling enthusiast. Born in Joplin, Missouri, he started with Walmart in 1984 in the local store building bicycles for the Christmas season. He stayed with Walmart, working his way through college. In 1993, he went into the store management after graduation. He moved to Bella Vista in 2003 as part of his 30-year career, taking on a role at Walmart corporate office. He was the president of the volunteer group Friends of Arkansas Single Track in Northwest Arkansas for 7 years, maintaining mountain bike trails around the region. At Walmart, he was director in the environmental division, working on recycling and sustainability programs before moving over to the Walton Family Foundation in 2015, supporting Stuart and Tom Walton with all their cycling and trail building projects. Gary is now the senior program officer for Stuart and Tom's personal foundation and was the 2019 recipient of the American Trails Chairman Award for advancing trail design and changing the landscape for trail systems. He's been married to Amy for 22 years and has 2 children, Grayson and Abby. His hobbies include mountain biking, motocross, and motorcycle trials. Welcome, Gary. All right, I'm gonna kick it off today, and then we'll just continue to dive in. David, I'm gonna start with you. Can you share with us how the trail development and programming of the trails has created a better quality of life for residents in our community?
Yeah, Amy, thanks. And thanks for allowing me to be here. I learn a lot when I listen to these bios. One, Vernon, what would you start with Walmart when you were 12? You started in 84. And the PhD in pizza, Graham, my kitchen is open tonight. And I will see you around 7 o'clock for a slice of pie at the house. So it's really an honor to be here with the folks on this group. And I think maybe more so, it's more of an honor to be involved in some of the things that are taking place in Bentonville and working with the people that are on this panel and having the relationships that we do. When you talk about Bentonville, and you talk about trail development, and you talk about the quality of life, we talk about what we have in town now, and people from all over this part of the country, all over the state, talk about what they have in Bentonville and what they're doing in Bentonville. But we haven't always had it, Gary. I mean, I go back 15 years ago, and Slaughter Pen was, a raw hill, a nice urban forest, and with some vision of, some very generous people in town. There was a desire to come and build 5 miles of mountain bike trail, and with a partnership with the city that said, if we build this 5 miles of trail, can we give it to the city? And then you maintain this and allow our citizens to use. The city council thought it was a great idea, moved forward, and we opened it. And people started using it. And before you know it, 2-3 years later, those 5 miles of trail weren't enough. And so we added another 5 miles of trail at Slaughter Pen. And sooner than 2 or 3 years, we realized that 5 miles weren't enough. And why were they not enough? They weren't enough because there were so many people that were using those trails. What started as a recreational activity for a few started growing and growing, and more people started saying, you know what, I'd like to try this out. And Slaughter Pen was the perfect introductory area for people to learn how to mountain bike. Those 5 miles, those 10 miles became 25 miles at Slaughter Pen, became a couple more miles at Park Springs. It morphed into miles at Bella Vista Lake, went a little bit further north, and it connected to the back 40 in Bella Vista. And then there's the Kohler Mountain Bike Preserve. That's another, 15 to 20 miles. And so it develops this network of trails that we have here in town. And the power behind all that is that they're all connected. You can take off from the area that I like to call the coolest trailhead in America, the downtown Bentonville Square, and you can hop on single track trail and you can ride out as far as you want to, all the way up into Bella Vista, and you can come back downtown when you're finished, and you can enjoy a beverage, a meal, or even ice cream on the downtown square. And so that uniqueness, that connectivity, is really created what we have from an experience standpoint in Bentonville. To get back to your original question, Amy, is how does it impact the quality of life? What started, this was purely a movement to start as a quality of life. We wanted something for our adults in our community to be able to have. And we don't have a baseball league for adults or an adult basketball league. What can we provide from a quality of life initiative? And we thought that mountain biking could become something. Did we have the vision that it would become this economic driver in our community when we started this 15 years ago? I can't honestly say that we did. But a couple of years into it, we started looking at it, and I'd be out in the trails and I'd say, I'm noticing a lot of license plates from Missouri and Oklahoma and Texas. What are these people doing here? And then you would meet people on the trail. There were 2 young folks that I remember seeing on a regular basis. They lived in Dallas, but they went to school in Springfield, Missouri, and they always stopped in Bentonville to ride the mountain bike trails. And that's when I think we all started talking like, we may be onto something. So this absolutely started as a quality of life movement for our citizens. We wanted recreational activities for people to live and enjoy in our community. It became a lot more than that, and that's why that's one of the reasons we're so successful. I think along those lines, I think you turn it over to Graham, and I think you ask Graham, when you talk about economic development, you talk about cycling our community, how do you use it as an economic development tool in recruiting new talent to our area?
Well, David, that's a great question, and there are a lot of layers to it. When you have the canvas prepared the way that the Walton Family Foundation has prepared it, and you have it maintained the way that City of Bentonville and you at Parks and Recreation have maintained it, it really does become a magnet, an attraction tool. And, it was mentioned early on that Sam Walton is the original adventurepreneur. That's a term we started using a few years ago. And he'd fly in his plane and turn it so he could see, all right, why is this parking lot empty? Here's an unfinished road. We need to buy the land before it's finished. We'll turn it into a distribution center. He fished. He played tennis. He loved the outdoors. He hunted. He soaked up adventure. And so that's the same with a high-performing CEO or founder of a company, and as well as the talent that really is needed to drive that company forward. So we actually launched a project a few years ago that we called the Because Bentonville Economic Development Campaign. Because Bentonville is a term we use to describe this quality of life and this experience that you only get in Bentonville. And honestly, through social media creeping and stalking, as well as some strategically placed ads that showcased economic vitality and high quality of life and community in the images against a backdrop of mountain biking, we reached out to people that had anything in their LinkedIn profile that self-identified to us as loving mountain biking, and sent them a virtual reality tour of the trails, a jar of soil from Slaughter Pen, and we deemed them ambassadors to Oz. And we said, you've had the virtual experience, come with us and have the real experience in Oz, return this soil to its Aboriginal resting place. And we invited, I guess, about 85 or 90 companies to join us at Outer Bike, the first time Kaelian and her team had brought in this world-class mountain bike experience. Well, 20 companies took us up on it. I mean, that's 1 in 4. That's pretty good conversion rate. And, it was funny, we brought them in, we didn't do a hard pitch. We just showed them around town, bought them some drinks at the holler, and then said, meet us at Outer Bike. You can ride with us if you want, you don't have to. And then we brought in ambassadors who also like to bike, folks that had moved here because they could live and work anywhere. They could do their job anywhere, and they chose here. And one of the reasons was for mountain biking. And what was funny is I think a lot of these folks thought, well, these chamber guys, they don't know what they're doing, and these ambassadors, I don't want to go mountain bike with these folks. And then they realized, oh, I'd invited a bunch of shredders. So we took these folks out on the trails. We had a great time, and actually 3 of those companies are still in play for relocation. Relocation is a long-term decision, right? But we're still in contact with these companies. And then, from a talent standpoint, when the pandemic hit, I had someone reach out to me immediately who had been in Seattle, who had come here because he loved mountain biking and loved cycling. And as soon as he was allowed to work remotely, he found his way back to Bentonville. Because of the access to the trails, because of the access of other amenities in proximity to those trails. And just in the last month, we've toured 3 economic development projects of varying size. Some are, 20 people, $25 million projects, and some are 400 people in $300 million annual projects. We've toured them in Bentonville, and every tour has included mountain bike rides. And one of the things I think so special about it is it's challenged by choice, to steal a term I learned from a group recently. Meaning, if I am in certain parts of the country, I might be near mountain bike trails. They're not accessible to me unless I'm a fit athlete, skilled or experienced in mountain biking. And in Bentonville, my 7-year-old daughter rides the same trails I do. She just rides them differently. And my 10-year-old son rides them. And when I say rides them differently, I mean, they're more proficient on the trails than I am. And, you know, you can lean into it, and there's a glide path that brings you along to whatever skill level and whatever risk level or adventure level you want. And you look at the coasts and major metros, cost of living is prohibitive. Quality of life is decaying because cost of living is prohibitive. There's not access to these amenities, and Bentonville offers that. And the talent that's flocked to the coast, the talent that has flocked to major metros, they've sought out places like Bentonville for years. You layer on a pandemic, and all of a sudden the value of these outdoor experiences is extraordinarily elevated. And, you know, Arkansas is positioned to do really, really well in an emerging and evolving economy. A lot of that is clearly in part to the work that, Gary, you've done, and the vision that you've of the people that have done it alongside you. Can you talk to me about two things that you and the foundation have done to support programming and development of trails that another community could learn from, could implement? What would you share with them as they develop trails in their town?
Well, first of all, Graham, I just had the opportunity today to take a company leadership group on a tour of slaughter pen in Bentonville. And I love taking people out and showing them slaughter pen for the first time, because it's so fun to take them feature after feature after feature, and you can kind of figure out what type of riders they are. And we have something for everybody. So I just love, you know, pulling over after a really fun trail and just listening to the joy that come out of these riders, you know, and I've got to experience that just before I jumped on this call. But, you know, first of all, to be this trail town that Bentonville is, it takes the entire community. You know, it takes the volunteer groups. It takes David Wright and the city staff, the mayor, Kaelian. Kaelian really got it early. You know, when I was the president of the local volunteer club, with probably had 12 miles of trail, we were having events on the trail, and we'd go to Kaelian and beg for money to have events. And you know, she'd give us a hard time, but she would give us a little bit of money. But she got it early. She figured out that, hey, cycling, mountain biking is great for Bentonville tourism. So hats off to her. And Bentonville would not be the bicycle playground it is today without David Wright. It was, and we had to start out slowly. We didn't build this big feature-rich system day one. You know, when the vision from the Walton family came out, it was some single track, 5 miles of single track. And then we started adding features slowly, because the community had to really kind of learn how to ride mountain bikes. And, you know, my advice to a new community that's getting into mountain biking is build that beginner system first. And, you know, have some jumps in it, because to get the way to get kids off their phones and on a bike is have fun, flowy jumps. You know, start out small, but the kids love, around here, they just love going downhill and getting a little bit of air. And Graham, I know you do too. But it really takes that collaboration between all of the community leaders. It's not just a bunch of money and a professional trail builder. It is every stakeholder in the community. And that's what we learned here. And you know, we get other communities always asking, Kaylene, David, myself, how did Bentonville do it? So we got together and created a trail lab, which is a 2-day conference that really teaches city leaders, parks and rec directors, volunteer groups, what is the first step to build a trail system. And what it is 2 days of show and tell of what Bentonville did. So David Wright comes in and talks about it from a parks perspective. Kaylene talks about how much money she's making now because of people coming to town, you know, staying in hotels and buying food at the restaurants. And then, you know, I'll talk about how we're trying to bring in the best trail builders in the world, because the worst thing you can do is have the wrong trail builder come in and build the wrong style of trail for your community. So it's really important to make sure that you learn who to bring. And, you know, it's proven with the economic impact study that we did in 2017. You know, David touched on it, but we really knew that there was people coming to town, but we really wanted to dig in and find out what the two counties here, Benton and Washington County, were hauling in with all these trails. And I mean, if you look on the Walton Family Foundation website or the People for Bikes website, who we partner with for the study, there's some big numbers. I mean, 2017, it has exponentially grown since then. 2020, you know, we're ready to do another study next year, and it's going to blow our minds. So many people are coming out, but even back then, the tourism was over $25 million just in the two counties, and business impact was over $50 million, and so on. And there's even a lot of health benefits, but it was really mind blowing. And that's where, if you're working with your community and wanting to really talk about a trail system, I would print that study off and walk in and show them that trails are an economic driver. And again, this started out as something to give back to the community from the Walton family, and it became a recruiting tool, Graham, as you touched on, and then it became a destination economic impact. So, man, I really, as much as I'm selfishly just pleased with having trails here, I was really pleased to see how good it was for our community. Now, I want to turn it over to my friend Suzanne, and at the Arkansas State Parks and Recreation Foundation, to talk about the work that she and her team do. And I'll tell you, this year they opened up one of my favorite trail systems, Mount Nebo, and she's opened up another one just last week she can talk about. But, you know, wow. Can you talk about, Suzanne, all the work you're doing and what the Monument Trail program is all about?
Absolutely, Gary. Thank you. And I want to thank Visit Bentonville for having me. I feel like I agree with all the sentiments that have been shared, which is I feel honored to participate today, because I think that each of us from our perspective has an enormous opportunity to shape our state. And I think that that's a really, for all that's going on with the pandemic, that is an amazing story that's happening in our state. So something to really grow on. You know, Arkansas Parks and Recreation Foundation at its core, very simply, just creates exceptional recreation experiences through philanthropy. And so we have the opportunity to work with organizations like Gary's, and we've been able to do some really amazing work in our 3.5 short years of work. And so I think Monument Trails is one of our really standout partnerships. We've partnered with Arkansas State Parks and the Walton Family Foundation to create this special partnership. And one of the things that Amy had an opportunity to share with us before this talk was, you know, what can people learn from this conversation and what you've done? And I think partnership is what makes Monument Trails so special. It is our work with Arkansas State Parks, who has built 52 state parks throughout our state through the years, and those parks have a story. And we get to tell those stories through each park that we work with Monument Trails. And so as a visitor is coming and making their destination, whether it's Hobbs or Mount Nebo or Pinnacle Mountain State Park or Devil's Den State Park, they get to that culture and environment, the historical features throughout the park, as well as a really special trail system. In a lot of ways, our foundation has learned from what's happened in Bentonville. You know, we've watched what people like, what makes a trail special, and working with the Walton Family Foundation, it's our special sauce. That enables us to do the special trail systems that allows creatives to be creative, that allows us to build some of the most quality and sustainable trail in the world. We've learned from every project that we worked on, and so each iteration is not growing on, but its own story. So it becomes a destination that is unique. Pinnacle is very different from Mount Nebo. I had the opportunity to talk to some people who came from Memphis to be in Little Rock for opening day at Pinnacle Mountain State Park. And they said, we've been to Nebo, but our fitness is more in line with Pinnacle. It's more attainable. We can come out in the evening, we can come out in the morning and do a shorter system ride, whereas Mount Nebo is really, it takes some athletic prowess. So, each of them has its own special story, and it has its own feel, it has its own look, and that's very intentional in our work. In the Northwest Arkansas area, Hob State Park, which is home to our first monument trail, it in and of itself is special because it's so unique. It's 18 miles of pedaling. It's 18 miles of beautiful forest, just a short drive from downtown Bentonville. And Hobbs is now, we're looking towards, Gary got an opportunity to preview some new features at Hobbs in the next, few weeks. We hope to open the trail hike-in, bike-in campsites that were designed by Heft Projects, as well as a trailhead that will be a launching point for the adventure that you're about to take on. They interpret the natural karst features that occur at Hobbs. And so that's just something, the first of many of our projects that add pieces infused of art and architecture into this work. So we are very excited that monument trails are just a little bit of hope off of Bentonville. They're really there for everyone to travel to and experience our state in a different way. So with that, Kaelian, you brought us all here together to talk about trails, but and we are so happy to talk about it. But you, in your position, you have a unique opportunity. You've seen the growth over 15 years. How do you see working with each of our organizations, and why is that important to do?
Sorry, just a second. Thanks, Suzanne. That's great. Well, I get to, I'm so excited that everybody was able to get on, because I get to work with these folks on a day-to-day basis and get to talk to them on a regular basis. And it is truly, it's special because you don't get this anywhere else. When I'm talking to folks, they're asking me, how do you work with this person? How do you work with their parks department? We don't get along with our parks department. How do you work with the foundation? And even adding Walmart as a corporation, largest corporation. And they're like, we're a town of 50,000. How do you work with them? How do you work with your chamber? Because a lot of times there's conflict. And, we have this, and you use the word special sauce. We have a special sauce here, I think, and maybe it's a special drink. I don't know from that perspective, but it's something that I am fortunate to get to do this. I think the thing that we have this Monday morning meeting that all of our leaders get together on this Monday morning, every single Monday. I've been doing it for 15 years. Every single Monday at 10 o'clock for 15 years. That is what's been going on. And what I think that has brought that group together is we kind of know what each other are doing. So we join forces and we work together. And I feel like there's three really key things, and that's joining forces. Most importantly, we share resources, money and ideas. So I use both of those in that resources. And I think the last one is the most important, is that we become a unity as a team. And that creates this positive environment of building trust within each other. So I always use this as an example, because we are, when we need to get something done, I can pick up the phone and call any one of these guys or somebody else and say, hey, this is the challenge we have, or this is the direction we're going in. What do we need to do? And if they're not the person, we figure out who those people are that we need to bring to the table, and we make it happen. We don't sit back. And I use this a lot, and I know David uses it, and maybe in a little bit different format, but we say solve for yes. That is our motto in our organization. It's on every one of our desks. We solve for yes as a community. But I think we do that as a community. It's our motto, but I feel like our community has embraced that. How do we make this happen? What it looks like. And sometimes we have to either the city has to compromise, we have to compromise, the event organizers have to compromise, but it's this collaborative effort that we work together. I think joining forces, from a tourism bureau, we work with attractions, hotels, and restaurants. Those are your normal. And then the other things, we work with our city officials, our nonprofits, our private businesses, our school system. If it has a tourism element to it, or there's even a touch of tourism, of bringing people in, we are working with them on a regular basis. It's not unusual for us to get a call for an event that the school's doing and saying, hey, we have this going on and grandparents are coming in. We're like, okay, what can we do? Do we need to get hotels for you? What do we need to do? But I think one of the ones that we do probably more often that we feel like it's second nature to us is that money and the ideas. We get on the phone and I think David and I have been on the phone 2 or 3 times today talking about 3 or 4 different events and activities and saying, okay, hey, here's what we're thinking. What do you think? Will this work? Gary and I have done that before. Graham and I talk about, we do the 5 o'clock drive home, figuring out what's the next on another project. What do we need to do on that? Because we're not the expert in every single field. We're the expert in our field. We utilize them on a regular basis to do that. And we do that. We can do it all by ourselves. We can do a lot of the projects by ourselves. I think we're much more successful when we do it as a team. I think that is what is key to us. And one of the things, I've been doing this for 15 years and I kind of chuckle a little bit because when I moved here, there was 21,000 people living here in Bentonville alone. Now there's over 50,000. We don't have a U.S. Census. I see David smiling. It's just such a small number. There wasn't a lot going on. We didn't have a Parks and Rec organization at that time. And I look back on it and I think we were really a corporate town and only a corporate town. If you were leisure destination, you came in to see the Walmart museum and you headed out. And so I'm just going to give you a real quick rundown of what's happened in the 15 years I've been here. And this is going to be really quick, but when I look at this and I look at this list, it always makes me smile and I get a little giddy. So bear with me as I get through this. So 2007, the first 5 miles were done. 2008, Native American Museum opened up. 2009 and 10, kind of Slaughter Pen phase 2 and 3. Crystal Bridges was 2011. 21C Museum was 2013. Amazium was 2015. Kohler Preserve was 2016, 17. There's still things going on there. So we can say that it keeps going, it keeps growing. Camping's going to be added. 2017, Brightwater 8th Street Market, and 2019, the Momentary. Now, all along that, though, is the Razorback Greenway was developed prior to all those things, and it had this connectivity that's going on. So one of the things that I am, we get to talk about the mountain bike, being the mountain bike capital of the world. We have this asset all along Northwest Arkansas of our trails, but this connectivity with the Razorback Paved Greenway, it can connect all of our communities together that really create a different environment that you're not going to get in most cities and most areas. So we've just created this environment that there's this quality of life, amenities that are not only attract visitors, as David and Graham talked about, it attracts businesses and relocation. So it connects our residents and our visitors all at one. So I'm fortunate that early on that I got to be involved in a lot of those projects just knowing about it. But a lot of those projects, and I use the Amazium as a prime example. I was on that board in 2005 when I moved here. So it was a 10-year project. None of these projects happened overnight. There is this vision and this collaboration for years into going into each one of these projects. So they do not happen overnight. It is a lot of minds working together. And I don't think the opportunities that we've had in our community that we would not have anywhere else is the teamwork that happens with it. And I think that's the thing I love about my job. I love coming in and hearing about what's going on in each of their cities and each of their areas to do with trails. I mean, trails for us is this connectivity, this opportunity. But one of the things that being the mountain bike capital of the world, it is about the experience that you're getting when you come into Bentonville. It's not just about riding the bike. It's about going into the brewery. It's about going into the restaurant, and how the bicycle friendly hotels, the bike locker rooms at 21C, the bike lockers at Hilton Garden Inn. Those are the kind of experiences that everyone wants to see the cyclist in our community. Go into the coffee shop. And I think that to me is just as valuable as getting on a trail and riding. And you know, I just started riding when I was 50, so I'm still learning. And I'm great at the green trails. And just so you know, Graham and Gary, my wheels stay on the ground. They don't go off the ground. But those are the kind of things that I think I value most, is that we've created this awesome experience for a cyclist to come into our area, that they continue to come back. And those are the experiences that we have being the mountain bike capital of the world. Also, and Gary, we're not stopping. There's a lot more coming as we continue to stick around. And I think Stuart or Tom has said, think about what's happened in the last 5 years, because I can't wait for the next 5. So is there any, Amy, do we have any questions? I think I hit everything that I was supposed to.
That was awesome. I love hearing the story. Like, I've been here now for 2 years, and the story never gets old. And then bringing Suzanne into the fold to be able to talk about it from a state level, and just that experience that people can get as Bentonville being like this gateway to so much more across our region and our state. David, I love it when you say that the Bentonville Town Square is the best trailhead in America. I think that's like my favorite all-time quote from David Wright. It'll go down in history. So with that, we do have some questions, and I think I'd like to tackle this from 3 different perspectives, both from David, Gary, and Suzanne. So a lot of other places across the country have to deal with a lot of either city, state, or even federal land managers when looking at trying to develop trail systems. So give us all a little bit of feedback or your experience as to what it took to convince some of those members of those local agencies or state agencies in that the trail system is an important piece.
Let me lead off.
Sure.
Yeah. So ironically, Amy, this is probably the most common question I get from people when they come from out of town and out of state, and knowing the inherent risk, oftentimes behind mountain biking. They say, how did you get this past your city attorney to be able to do these things here? I think there's a couple of answers to that. But the most common thing that I usually tell people is that, you know, there's also inherent risk with baseball. There's kids that break their nose, and I hope it never happens, but it does, and lose a tooth from a bad hop on a baseball off the infield. Accidents are going to happen in mountain biking. They're going to happen in anything we do in our public park system. What we're doing locally, and what I would encourage everybody to do across the country, is that, you know, to Gary's point earlier, it's the type of trail we're building. We're hiring professional trail builders to come in and do this. It's not somebody with my knowledge that's going out there and doing something in a manner we're not supposed to. We're hiring great companies to come in and to design and build these trails that are as fun and as challenging as they can be, but also understanding the liability side of building things the right way to provide the experience that they're supposed to provide. The other aspect of that is that people report things to us. When something doesn't look right, they call us, they tell us about it, they post it on social media, and we have a team that is dedicated to go out and addressing those things the very next day. So our pledge, if you will, is that when you tell us about it, we're going to try to address it within 24 hours. Now, sometimes that's not always possible. Sometimes these things happen during a major weather event, and it may take us 2 or 3 days, but we know about it, and we'll start working on the solution within 24 hours. The other thing about that, and I think this is, Kaelian mentioned this is something we've said in the past. As government officials, we're trained to say no, right? I mean, they teach us this in college, and there's all these reasons of why you're not supposed to do something. But I think what we did in Bentonville, and I think we were doing it really well, I think we still do it well now, but really well, 10 years ago, is that we were trying to find ways to say yes. And so when we want to build 5 more miles of mountain bike trail, yes, let's do it. There's a couple of things that we've got to make sure we do right, but let's go do this to provide these types of opportunities in our community. Look, fast forward to where we are now, look at the result. It's amazing what will happen when we all get out of our own way, start finding the ability to say yes, and say, let's make sure we accomplish these 5 things as we do this, and that way we'll be able to provide the experience that we may have.
Awesome. Gary, do you want to jump in? Because I know you've been around the US and the world quite a bit, and so I know that you get this question a lot, and then we'll pitch it over to Suzanne and get your follow-up from a state parks perspective.
Well, speaking of state parks, one of the things, obviously, with Bentonville's success and, again, David Wright's support that we did slowly over, a 15-year period, it was slowly building the trails correctly, and then bringing as we built bigger features, going to David saying, hey, we're thinking about this, and ensuring that they're done by professionals. But the same thing when we started looking at the state, how can we expand mountain biking around the state? Well, the state parks had the best facilities, so we needed to get our park director for state parks on a mountain bike. That was our strategy. And Kalene went with me. We took Grady to Oregon and put him on a mountain bike and sent him downhill. He became a mountain biker. Now, Grady, he's an old surfer, so it was no problem converting him over to surfing on a bicycle. But that was our secret. And, again, anything that any sport has an inherent risk, but the health benefits and I think it's unhealthy to sit around and watch TV and get on your computer and play on your phone. So getting outside and getting fresh air and riding your mountain bike is definitely good therapy.
Well, and I'll just piggyback off of Gary, which is to say, it's about showing and sharing. That's a big part of working with any public agency, is that you can't just say, this is what we want to do. You have to show them what it is that you're going to do. So again, Bentonville's been a great show and share moment. Getting people to Bentonville and showing them what you all have done is really critical to any city around the country trying to do something similarly. I will also just add that a big charge that any city public agency, they want to know what is the benefit. What is the benefit of doing this in their park, in their city, in their national U.S. Forest Service, national parks, anything. What is the benefit? And I think that really goes back to, I think Graham really drove that home earlier, which is to say the economic benefit, the increased visitorship, the diversity of who comes. Those are the why. The why is what does it benefit that place? Or how does it benefit that place? And I think that is a lot of times economic and user driven. So I think that's probably in a lot of ways, David, you could probably say, we want people to use our parks. We want people to come and visit and do. I think the same is for the state of Arkansas. I think the state of Arkansas wants diverse users. I think it wants to increase how people see the parks, and it wants a future. It wants a future for the state park system. It wants people, younger people, future generations to explore. So I think that those two things about showing and sharing and showing them the why, I think that goes a long way.
Suzanne, the diversity of park usage is really important. Kaelian mentioned we're a town of 50,000 plus right now, or at least till the census comes out. We have 21 public parks in Bentonville, and in 2019, 3.5 million people visited our public parks.
It's amazing.
It is an unfathomable number that's taking place here, and it's because of the diversity of the system. The kids playing baseball that may be injured, that I mentioned earlier, is a big part of that, but so is the cycling aspect. Probably as much as 50% of that are people that are utilizing our hard surface and our single track trails throughout the network. That connected network system provides so much access to the green space and recreational opportunities in our towns, and the benefit is 3.5 million people using them per year.
It's amazing.
Thank you for sharing all that information, you guys. It's amazing. Kaelian and Graham, I want to talk to you guys a little bit about, a lot of people ask, like, tourism's involved or the chamber's involved in cycling. You know, and I know that you guys work really well together in a lot of aspects, and Kaelian always says, like, being able to talk about the story is the gateway to economic development. So Kaelian, can you share with us about how important it is to share your story, and how that, and then go over to Graham as far as how that's really helped play in tandem?
Yeah. Well, yeah, sure. I think one of the things that I learned a long time ago, I was in a training, and they talked about how tourism is the economic development, is the gateway to economic development, because we're telling the story of our community, which is influencing them to invest their businesses or invest in relocation. And people they're not going to invest before they visit. Most often, I'm going to say there's some randoms that do that. I think, Graham, I heard one this morning. And then there's also, they're not going to relocate till they come and visit. So I think we're like the front door to the visitor. But what's most important about that is that, and when we started telling our story, and Gary and I had many conversations in 2006 and 7, when they're like, we have 5 miles, Kaelian, go tell the world. And I'm like, okay, are they going to travel here for 5 miles? I don't know cyclists that well. Who do I need to call? What do I need to do? And trying to educate myself on when, you know, if somebody's looking for a destination to go cycling, how many miles do they need to have that destination? What is the experience they're looking for? And what I did learn is that there was a lot of communities that had some amazing cycling, but they didn't tell their story to anybody, so nobody knew about them. And so what I learned early on is that when somebody asked David Wright and I to speak at a conference in 2000, I want to say 10, David, maybe 9 or 10. It was early on. And we both got on the plane and we looked at each other and said, I think we're kind of like infants in this cycling world. What are we doing? We got on the plane when we returned and said, man, we are young adults. We are on top of this world. We realized that we didn't think that we were there, but we were there. We had more knowledge because of what was going on in our community in 3 years, and the collaboration that was going on and the teamwork that I don't think a lot of people were doing. They're like, why are you? I mean, I remember at the trade show, David, and I'll wrap up because I want to give Graham a lot of time because he's awesome. And David, when that lady came up to you and said, you work for Parks and Rec? And David, you may even comment, and she said, do you work with your tourism bureau? We don't like ours. And David's like, yeah, she's right here. We're together. Do you remember that, David? I mean,
yeah, no, I didn't tell her I liked you or anything, but I did say that we were there with one another.
Yeah, great.
I'm just joking. You opened the door, Kaelian.
Yeah, for sure. That's all right.
Yeah, it really was. They were blown away that we were there working together as partners. I mean, it was unique.
It was kind of unique, and we heard that a lot. And then we spoke at 2 or 3 different conferences together because people wanted to show how we work together. And I think the most important thing is creating that story that has multiple levels of an experience in a different ways. We're not going to tell the same story for everything that we do from a cycling perspective, because we're going to talk differently to our adventure cyclists than we are going to be talking to our family cyclists, like Graham said, with his daughter and son. We have to talk differently to those audiences because we sent a video to somebody and they sent me a note. They're like, oh, those trails are too advanced for me, because a couple of our first videos were very advanced videos. And I learned real quick, I'm like, oh, no, I can ride the trails. If I can ride the trails, you can ride the trails. And so it's kind of one of those things that we have to show all aspects of the story. We have to be inspirational inspirational, authentic. I think the genuine experience here is what has been our biggest asset, and that it's very authentic and unique in our community. So I think those are the things. But I think what has happened is that, and Graham we do influencing with a lot of people telling our story. And I think, Graham, you're now doing a lot of influencers and telling that story in a little bit different way than what we are. But I think you've got some great aspects from an economic development standpoint. And I think your Outer Bike is a prime example of that.
Yeah, and you're right. Some of the storytelling, you know, those advanced mountain bike videos, they were a little over the top. So I learned that in the video, I need to tone it down. You know, hit these 10-foot gaps. Just, I don't want to intimidate people. No, I think, you know, at the risk of sounding like chamber guys, Bentonville embraces this this cooperative, collaborative spirit that the region has embraced, you know, since Mr. Tyson, Mr. Hunt, and Mr. Walton decided that the region would be better if they all worked together, you know, and there's no XNA without it, and there's no Beaver Water District without it. And, you know, to Gary's point, in a world of screen this and screen here and screen there, there's so much noise that you can't tell the story enough. There's a lot of nuances to the story. And we know that tourism is, it is the gateway to relocation. You know, recreation is the gateway to relocation. It's a smaller cycle to sell, go on a vacation, than it is move 100 people in your entire business here. But if I come here and let's say I own a business and I think that I'm successful, I come here and I enjoy myself, I start to look around and go, okay, well, maybe the people that are helping me move this business forward would like being here as well. You relate to that, you know, and I learned that from speakers that you brought in, Kaelian. I mean, that's why Colorado has someone focused on outdoor recreation as economic development. And then, I think from a storytelling standpoint, you know, you bang the drum of come here and recreate. We bang the drum of access and proximity and opportunity for remote work and for industry. And so it's more of this kind of holistic approach, not one singular event, but you know, no organization has infinite resources. So what we try to be really intentional about is maximizing efficiency, and that comes from minimizing duplicity. You know, I don't need to do the same thing you're doing. I also need to be confident in my organization's ability to knock it out of the park, but not humble enough to know that somebody may be able to do it better than me. And there's enough work for everybody to do. And instead of looking at Outer Bike and going, man, that's amazing, we should do the next big bike summit, that's a great idea. I should look at Outer Bike and go, how can I take what Kaeline's doing and use the work that she's done and use the dollars that it's taken to get this to happen, be an efficient, help her to be a steward of the private dollars and the public dollars that have gone into making this happen, and use it for what our mission is, and that's building a 21st century economy or community to help drive a 21st century economy. It's not about looking at it and going, that's tourism. Oh, that's economic development. I mean, that's just such an old school way to look at things. And whether or not it's mountain biking or an entertainment district or, you know, in the middle of a downtown, to say, okay, well, we have an entertainment district where there's killer bars and bands playing and people having a good time, that's just for my community. No, that's for the businesses that want the smartest people in the world to come and help their business because they're attracted to those things. That's the way I look at what the stories that we're telling from an economic development standpoint, and that you're telling from a tourism standpoint. And lastly, I think it's really important for people to recognize that when you're really close to the work that's being done and you're passionate about it, the way people on this call are, it's easy to think that you're talking too much about it, that everybody's heard it. And I promise you, no one's heard about your town outside of the people in your town. not the stories that you want to tell. People just don't know. And an old chamber saying, when we're talking about advocacy, is if they don't know, they vote no. And the same is true if they're voting with their dollars and they're looking at how they're going to allocate their budgets for their business or for their family or for their ladies' weekend trip to go mountain biking. If they don't know about a place, they're not going to go to a place. So that doesn't matter what the goal of that trip is.
Awesome. Thanks, Graham and Kaelian. That was great. We're right at 4:00. But I do want to ask everyone one last question and rapid fire. What is one cycling development that's happened here locally or at the state level that you feel is the most innovative? Gary, you're up.
Fair question.
And then we'll wrap with that.
This one thing that's, as far as innovation, it's just really some of the secret formula for Arkansas is we've over the winter we had 100 different trail builders working on trail at the same time, several different companies all working in friendly competition, and they're all pushing each other. And we even get together, during the week, like we've been doing Monday night rides, inviting different trail builders to ride with us and going to ride different new trail systems and having a great time doing it. But everybody's pushing each other to who's building the best trail. And the users are voting. Whoever's, we have trail counters all around our trail system, and you can tell which trail is getting the most use. And a lot of times it's the new one. And then when there's another new one that's maybe even the new favorite, then the trail counters show that data. But I think the innovation is just the world-class trail builders we're bringing to the region. We're always recruiting, some of the best trail builders, and they're coming here and just trying to push that envelope. And if you look around Slaughter Pen and Bella Vista and Nebo and Pinnacle and Fayetteville and all around the state, you can tell where the envelope continues to get pushed. So the last 5 years have been awesome. The next 5 years, hold on.
Great. Who wants to jump in next? Suzanne?
So I'll say I won't choose one of mine because I think they're the best. So I'll say that, but I'll choose one that is not mine. And it's one I have learned from since its inception, and it's for a lot of different reasons. And it's changed why I like it, which is I think Kohler pushed the edge on what a mountain bike system is. And the reason is because it infused early on so many different elements that made it spectacular, whether that's design, a diversity of trails, having the spine of the greenway that goes through it. It would, on a pretty fall day, there's just not very many better moments. You just get the breeze. It's pretty, it's very, and Graham, speaking from someone who lives in Little Rock and looks at Bentonville, I'm like, well, why wouldn't you want to do this every day? Why don't we live there? So I think that is a inspiring system, and even the branding, the bike preserve versus a system itself, we learned from that early on, and a lot of our iterations, a lot of our growth came from that system. So that's really just one of those standout places in Bentonville.
Well, you stole mine, first of all. I was going to say Kohler because I love that. And it started, I know there's somebody on the call that was on this ride, but I'll run into to friends that are much better riders than I am. And if we're at Kohler, we can all run into each other at the same spot, and then we're distributed on the lines on which we're most comfortable. And then it feels very natural that they connect us again at points. So I first saw that with my friends who mountain bike, and then now I've seen it with my family and our quarantine bubble, as we will meet friends at Kohler, and some people will stay on the Greenway, others will get off on these kind of bunny trails, and as soon as one child does that, all the other kids follow. But you know, it's unbelievable. And what I'll say, just over the last 10, 12 years, I remember working on a publication in the Delta on duck hunting and talking with landowners and lodges in Arkansas County about how folks from England would come and hunt carp in the ponds that they had. What in the world? And they said they're just out for adventure and a Southern experience. And I said, well, what about mountain biking? What about gravel riding? That's an adventure and a Southern experience. And for the state of Arkansas and the communities across the state of Arkansas to embrace that, I think is a game changer. And it doesn't sound like innovation, but it's innovative. And, you know, if we want to continue to provide a future Arkansas where, you know, our children want to stay because of the quality of life, but also because they have the opportunity to enjoy a job and a career that they're proud of, I think outdoor recreation is key to that. And for the longest time, that was hunting and fishing only. It should still be hunting and fishing, but it has to be bikes as well. It's too obvious. So the way that you see a Kohler preserve in Bentonville, and then also the way you see the bless their hearts, the amazing Burns Park trails in North Little Rock that overlook my hometown, Little Rock, and are gorgeous. You hit on it. You have to build appropriate trails for the community, you know? So those might go through swamps in the Delta, and man, you couldn't keep me off of them if there was single track I could ride through cotton fields in September. If you could keep the dove hunters away, I'd be there. I mean, there's so much to offer in Arkansas, but the trails have to make sense. And I think we're seeing in places like Kohler where they do make sense. And with the monument trails, they all have a unique feel to them.
Amy, I'll go regional. I think it's the Razorback Greenway. And when we talk about Slaughter Pen, Crystal Bridges, downtown Bentonville, the Promenade in Rogers, the Amp in Rogers, downtown Springdale, Thunder Chicken, downtown Fayetteville, the University of Arkansas, what's the one thing it all has in common? It's accessible by the Razorback Greenway. And these are four towns that historically haven't always worked together very well. And I remember the day that we sat in the hotel ballroom in Bentonville, and we literally drew out a map of where we thought the Razorback Greenway could go before there was even a name of it. I remember standing there talking to my friend Matt Mihailovich, who's the trails coordinator for the city of Fayetteville, and there were all four mayors were in the town and in the room at one time. And the planning consultant said, "Is this what y'all would like to work on?" And everybody collectively at one time in unison said, "Yes, absolutely." And I said to Matt, "I think this is the first time in history that all four mayors were in one room at one time. They actually all agreed on something." Fast forward to today and look at what it is, and look at what the impact it is. Look at it's part of our region's personality. It's part of what we talk about in Northwest Arkansas. And so when we talk about from an innovation standpoint in cycling, I mean, this whole call has been about collaboration. I think that took the collaboration to a whole new level, and we're reaping the benefits from it.
Well, I'm gonna kind of go down smaller, because I think one of the things, because Kohler was one of mine, because and then also the accessibility and the Razorback Greenway. I was trying to figure out how do I connect all of them. I think since you guys all said that, what I think is that most innovative for me is that we are, and Gary is leading the effort on this, is we are creating unique experiences throughout the trail. The masterpiece, the hammer, the hub, those are things that you don't see anywhere else. That I'm not an avid cyclist. They're not things that I'm probably going to see a lot of, but I know I get to see a lot of pictures of them and they're awesome. But I'm not going to get on a lot of those rides. But I do think it is when somebody's talking to me, they're talking about, and I say we have this cycling and arts as our initiatives. So it's this art within the cycling industry that is being created on our trails that you're not getting anywhere else, that you're getting this unique experience that you normally don't get, because it's not it's more than just a single track. It's creating kind of a unique experience within the single track. And I think that's one of the things that I value, is that we kind of think outside of the box, or we even erase the box, as I say often, but we're erasing that box and not doing the same thing over and over. It's different in every city. It's different on every trail that we have. And I think that is what makes us innovative and unique. And I value that every single day when I get to talk about the trails within our system. Amy?
Great. Thank you. Thank you so much, Kaelian, David, Suzanne, Graham, Gary. I know we could probably continue on this conversation, and I think our audience would love to hear more. So we might have to take this show on the road at some point here with everyone. But I really do appreciate you all making time today to share your stories and to talk about Bentonville and the region and the state as a whole. For everyone, thank you for joining us today and tuning in. We look forward to seeing you again next week, Tuesday at 3 p.m. as we hear from People for Bikes. And again, if there's any experiences you'd like to share with us on social, feel free to tag us at Visit Bentonville, at Bike Bentonville, and hashtag AR Bike Summit 2020. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.